All right. So now I'm hoping you can talk me through your decision-making process. So you have this incredible career as a historian. You decide to retire. You could look forward to kind of sitting around and exploring your interests, but instead you decide to pursue a BFA, MFA in art.
Yes.
What led to that decision?
The first thing was that I wanted to do it and I could.
Yeah, that's a great reason.
But it's hard for a woman to say that and do that. But the other thing was, and those of you in this room who are women will understand all those little things that kind of, so it wasn't that hard leaving my previous job. I mean, I loved history, I love research, I love writing, I loved everything about it. But I could do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And what made you, so there are those who would say, or those who have retired and, taken an art course at a community college or done something recreationally, but you chose a kind of much more formal and aggressive course.
I did. At first, I thought, well, people said to me, you have enough degrees, you could just do what you want, follow your muse. Yeah, I've got a muse. So I took a class, and then just wasn't right. It wasn't rigorous enough. I'm one of those hardworking, intense people, and it wasn't hardworking and intense. It was nice. So then I took a drawing and painting marathon at the studio school. I live in Newark. You remember New Jersey. I lived in Newark, so I would go down to Newark Penn Station. I would take New Jersey Transit. I would take the subway. I would go to the studio school on 8th Street. I would stand up and draw and paint for 8 hours. And then I'd stay if there were crits, but I couldn't stay too late because the light rail would stop running. But I could stay like till 9 or 9:30. And then I would do it all over again. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I said, yeah.
So when you were younger, before you went to college or once you got to college, you thought about pursuing art formally and decided against it. What were the things that happened that made you kind of shift course there?
There were two things. The first thing was I got a C in sculpture. I mean, I earned my C. I didn't do anything. I thought if you have enough talent, you don't have to do any work. Mm. And I didn't do any work. I did awful sculpture, and I got a C. And I thought, well, that proves I don't have enough talent.
Wow. So I'm wondering now looking back on that, and you're kind of laughing about it, right?
I am.
The idea that this one C in this one class that you didn't actually try very hard in would discourage you from pursuing this. I'm wondering, what would you tell your younger self about that class or about whatever lessons that taught you or whatever happened in your mind that told you, yeah, this isn't for me?
Two things. One, talent is not something inside you that either you are or you aren't talented. Talent is what makes you want to keep doing something for a long time in order to get fairly good at it. That's talent. It's interest. It's being drawn to something. So I would say that idea of talent, of genius, which inevitably women didn't have, that's a crazy 20th century idea. The other thing was you have to know somebody and you have to be able to see your way, which I didn't. I come from an academic family. I was a good writer. I got patted on the back for writing. I knew exactly what the steps were, so I went that way. It was the easiest thing to do.
Yeah. So you're tired, you decide this is the course of action you're going to take. I'm wondering, what did your friends and family say about it?
My friends and family said, yes, this is wonderful. I wish I could do it too. I want to be an artist. There was this idea about life in the arts. It's so glamorous and wonderful, and you're just creative, and the muse comes to you, and you wear a great scarf. And they said, well, be sure to take notes and tell us what it's like. So I did.
Yeah.
I did. The other thing was my fellow students at Rutgers, at Mason Groves, they sort of ignored me. You know how kids are when they're, 19, 20, they're so self-absorbed. And this was a gift the youth gave to me, to be self-absorbed.
Yeah.
I do that now, but it's hard. It's hard at first. But they would say, "How old are you?" People asked me that all the way through, and they still kind of ask. I was born in 1942.
So you said that your friends and family asked you to take notes about what it was like, the scarves, the muse, the whole thing. So what was your report back to them?
In the long run, it was old in art school. Mm-hmm. That's the memoir. In the short run, it was, I can't tell them this. I can't tell them what a pathetic mess I was. Because, I never thought of myself as a diva, but it was something for me to be somebody. I mean, I really just took it for granted. And then, especially at the Rhode Island School of Design at RISD, where being old, like I was the little old lady, I was nobody. And I had a teacher who would start every crit with, you can't draw and you can't paint, and I believed her. I was such a pathetic mess. I could not tell people that. I thought. Well, I did tell you that, and I tell you that in the book.
Yeah.
But it took some time.
So I'm wondering, do you think that the ability to get through art school, the type of art school that you really wanted to do you think that doing it at an older age gave you an ability to get through it in a way that you just would not have been able to in your 20s?
Absolutely, yes. I start old in art school with something that actually happened to me, and I tell you his name, Teacher Henry. Teacher Henry said, "You will never be an artist." And I said, "Henry, that's bullshit." I couldn't have done it if I had been younger.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it if I had not been a teacher and knew this is not the way you talk to students. But what really got me through was that being an older person, I had been collecting people for then 65 years. And so I had my own network of people. I had my alternatives. But when you're younger, you don't have enough time to gather those people you need. So what got me through were the gifts of age.
Right. So you've been an artist for several years now, and we have some of your art here. I was wondering if we could take a look at it,
Sure.
And you could maybe walk us through a little
Sure.
bit of it.
Now, these are pieces that are in old in art school. So these are art school pieces. This drawing, which I call my 20th century drawing, was a drawing that was in my application to graduate school portfolio. I was very proud of it. And when I showed it to my teacher at RISD, he said, "Oh, that's a very nice drawing, but it's so 20th century." Let's go on. Next. This is my attempt to get into the 21st century. This is my last RISD painting, and it is called Backman 1, because the central figure turns his back to you. And I painted a lot of Backman. This was 2011, 2012. I painted a lot of Backman. So this was in my MFA portfolio. This is one of 1,000 self-portraits that I have done. I just love making self-portraits because I don't mind how I look. I don't offend myself. Yeah, thanks.
I'm wondering how your style and approach to your art has changed over time.
Changed over time, definitely, and the short answer is simply by doing. Because the way I make art, kind of the way I write too, is one step at a time. It's like here to here, this one leads to that. It's not like, here's the great goal and you work to it. No, it's... So things change over time. One big change that I found really liberating was to go from that first 20th century drawing, which is very much a kind of abex drawing in a way, it's gestural and all that, to working back and forth between the hand and the computer. I found that working digitally really freed me because Photoshop doesn't care about whether or not the pixel next to it makes sense. My handicap, my 20th century handicap, my old woman's handicap in a way, was that I wanted to make sense, my historian's handicap. And so using digital media helped me pull away from making sense. So now I work much more abstractly.
Were you surprised to find that, kind of your love of digital media, and that you had a difficult time kind of letting go of that historian part of your brain in order to get your art where you wanted it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. That was kind of the hardest brain thing to do, to get from discursive meaning to purely visual meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to let the audience know that once again, we're going to come to you for questions. Most of you have already been here, so you know my deal. Questions, condense them, hands up high. So, you know, a lot of what you said earlier about why you went into history, kind of this feeling of not being able to see yourself as an artist or not feeling that you were talented enough, I think that's something that probably resonates a lot with young women, particularly young women of color, this feeling that out the gate you have to be brilliant all the time, all A's, otherwise it's not for you and you need to kind of jump ship.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what it was like to kind of see that reflected in young women that you taught and young women that you interacted with, and then if that made you think differently about your own experience.
Yes. I had an interview with a young woman right after I opened my own studio in Newark, and we talked, and she wanted to tell me about her, too. And as we talked, I realized that I wanted actually to give her some advice. Usually I don't give people advice because they don't want advice. They just want to tell you what they think. So I gave her some advice, which was advice that I had to learn very slowly. Do not see yourself through other people's eyes. Do not see yourself through other people's eyes. And I think this is particularly important for women of color, for black women, for dark-skinned black women. Do not see yourself through other people's eyes, because mostly they are sending you negative vibes. But it's true for women generally. Do not see yourself through other people's eyes. See yourself through your inner eye, or your best friend's eyes on you, or your mother's eyes on you, or your loving husband's eyes on you, but not the world. And if there was one thing I could do to change our culture, it would be to make the shift for old that we made for black. Remember when black was a really bad word? You called somebody black, they would beat you up. It's terrible. And then things changed, and black became beautiful, and now everybody's black, no big deal. When I was young, we didn't see black people as in sort of culture, in society, in reflected back. And then it got so if there was a person who was black, then you could see a black person, say, in the papers or selling you something. And then it got so a black body could just be a body, just be a person. So now the person who sends you insurance can be black. I wish we could do that with old. So when I was doing my book tour, if I was getting the right vibes from the audience, I would tell them about that. And I'd say, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. And, yeah. And then I'd say, can you say that? And they'd say, even if it looked like this. And they'd say it, and everybody, it was very liberating, really, for white people to say, I'm Black and I'm proud. But then, can you say it loud, I'm old and I'm proud? Oh, you can do it. Okay. Say it loud. I love it. Say this every morning.
Well, I think this is a great place to take some questions from the audience, if there are any. I think there's one right here.
I loved your book.
Thank you.
And one of the things you talked about was the caretaking of your father.
Yeah.
And it was so poignant. You talked about the beautiful and the unbeautiful. Could you comment on that and its impact on your art?
Yeah. So I thought when I went to art school that I had everything fixed up. We moved our parents out of home. They were in a nice continuing care. My book was done. Well, the parents are never stabilized, and the book wasn't really done. I discovered that one of the things about being old in art school, or about being old, is you can't go from one life to another. You just take it all with you. So I took it all with me, including my mother's death in 2009, the same year that I graduated from Mason Gross, as the tiredest person in the entire universe. And then my father's long decline and my father's depression. Depression, I knew already, was just the worst thing in the world, and it just got worse and worse. But what saved things for him and for us was that when he turned 95, it was also about the same time that the deacons of Bethany Baptist Church started visiting him. And so the deacons would come, older men, older Black men like himself in their suits. And my parents had gone to a New Age church for many, many years, but I think deep in their heart they were still Baptist. So here were these Baptist gentlemen, and they would tell him that God is good. I mean, I hadn't heard my parents talk like that since like the 60s. But my father started saying, God is good. And his depression lifted. So when he died in 2016, 2 days before the presidential election, he was at peace. Yeah. But that was another life that just had to be fit in with art school.
Everyone, please join me in thanking Nell Painter.
Thank you.